Hello and welcome to another week of my book club. My name is Shasta Roberts and we are reading my book, Stronger Than Your Excuses. We are currently on part 2 of the 6 reasons I decided to leave my marriage. So today we are on reason number 5. I have changed. Each stage of your life needs closure. No matter what it is that is going on, we all need some type of closure before we can move on. If there's no closure, we are emotionally still attached, and our mind will not let it go. You hear it talked about for relationships, but it is for everything in life. We don't realize it, but everything in our life needs closure. You might sell an item but stick to a certain price because you need the closure. You didn't really want to get rid of it, but money talks only at a certain price. Think about it for a minute. Do you have things that you don't use that you are just not ready to get rid of? Why are you not ready? You haven't moved on from the emotional attachment to the item. Storage units did not appear until the late 60s. We didn't keep things we didn't need. Let's just be honest. Before then was a time you only bought what you needed to begin with. It was a much simpler time. We didn't have shows revolving around hoarders because hoarding was not a thing. A hoarder is someone who stores valued objects. The value is based on your value of them, not necessarily the monetary value. The emotional value you put on its worth is way more than it is monetarily most of the time. We overvalue things in our lives. Too many to count, that is for sure. If we didn't, there wouldn't be shows about hoarders or tidying up. What changed to make us more attached to things? Why do we attach to inanimate objects? Do they fill a void or are we needing filled? Do they make us forget about our troubles? No, they do not, but we sure think they do. That's why we go and spend money on a bad day. That's why we buy more things we think we need when we don't have the money for them. It makes us feel better, but it can only continue for so long. At some point, you need to stop and see the destruction that is happening. Nothing can fill a void. Only getting actual closure and accepting it will not only fill in the void, but it'll make it non-existent. This is with all things in life. There are more deeper meanings that we must accept about ourselves to have closure. You don't want to get rid of a shirt because you have to realize you've gained weight. You have a hard time getting rid of baby clothes because your kids used to wear them. They don't fit them. If you're done with having kids, get rid of them. Your 9-year-old will never fit in it again. Yes, they grow up fast. It sucks. It's hard. But don't keep things around that remind you how hard it is to see them grow up. You don't want to get rid of the cookie container from your grandma, although you never use it and it's chipped all over. She probably hated it to begin with. But back then, there weren't the endless designers where she could get what she wanted. Move on to bigger, better things and keep what serves you. I love remembering the past, except for when it makes you more sad than happy. Or when it's boxed up in a storage unit. It is not doing you any good. We need to rid our lives of all these inanimate objects and hold our emotions in our lives so we can start being emotionally attached to actual things that matter in our lives. When your life is so cluttered, it's hard to be focused on what really matters. You need to refocus your life and clean out all the unnecessary. Find the closure you need to move past each component so you can progress. By far, the worst closure to move past is relationship closure. Not just with girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, but the closure with friends and family too. Closure with human connection tied in is a whole other ballgame. It is still the same principle though. No matter who they are to you, if they don't bring light into your life, if they don't bring you meaning, if they're not significant in your life, you need to find closure and move on. All my excuses why I needed to stay in my marriage were partly because it hadn't ended yet. There was no closing motion. I wasn't ready to move on to another life. I kept making excuses of why I needed to stay. How do you find closure in a marriage when you're still clinging to the excuses of why to stay? Well, I can't say I was looking for it, but it did find me. One day, one moment, I just looked at him and thought, I don't need you. I don't fully love you. I am ready to move on with my life. We never had a honeymoon because we paid for a lot of our wedding and couldn't afford one. His dream was to go to Australia before I ever met him. Sounded like a perfect place to visit to me. I love exploring and have always wanted to travel the world. We decided that we would take our honeymoon finally on our 5-year wedding anniversary. Unfortunately, I could not say that we were even in a good place with each other then. I wished every day in Australia that I was with someone else there. It was an amazing trip and I want to go back, but not with him. Even though Australia should have been a sign something was wrong, we didn't see it. Before we knew it, 5 more years had gone by, and it was time for another anniversary trip for our 10-year wedding anniversary. It's not like we haven't taken trips in between our big trips, because we take a trip yearly. It's just the other trips were with other people, or just for the weekend together. A week alone together pulls out all the good or bad in a relationship. A weekend is not long enough to bring light to anything. We both agreed we were not in a fantastic place in Australia, and over a week, just the two of us, is too long when we don't get along. I vowed that would not happen again on our trip to Italy. I went over how I tried to help my marriage before our trip. I even told him I don't want to go to Italy hating each other like we did Australia, and he agreed. He didn't want that either. A week alone together when we have 3 kids should be a make-out fest. When you must force yourself to have sex on a romantic trip, it is not romantic. Our vacation was fast approaching, and we weren't better. We stopped fighting, but I was still trying so hard to mend us, and he wasn't at all. What I didn't know until after our trip was us stop fighting was just him holding his tongue and not disagreeing. That doesn't help anyone have a better relationship. Fights will happen in any relationship, but most of your disagreements you should be able to be talked out and not yelled through. Holding your tongue and not saying what you feel does nothing for no one. It actually made the situation worse. At least when we fought, we got to the bottom of the problem eventually. If you never reach a conclusion both parties are happy or at least okay with, you will not have the slightest chance for a relationship working. I had 2 friends who knew my true, deepest, darkest feelings at this point. I I knew Italy would make or break us. I went hoping that it would make us better, but skeptical at the same time. I saw the closure coming, but hadn't quite gotten there emotionally yet. Italy was a train wreck from the moment the vacation started. Something was my fault consistently since I planned the trip. We visited England, Rome, Florence, and then Venice. Somewhere in downtown Florence, I found my closure and I knew I was done. At that point, I was ready to head home just to get away from him. I can pinpoint a couple things that pushed me over the edge, but nothing big. I had already been on the edge for years. We were in a country where we didn't speak the same language, and I was always the one who had to communicate. I also planned the whole trip because he downright refused to help. I would ask him to look up a place he would like to see, and he would tell me that he trusted my choices. After a couple days of, I don't care, you planned this vacation, it's your decision, I looked at him and knew I didn't love him. If you can't find happiness in one of the most romantic places on earth, I don't think we'll be able to find it anywhere. He saw the trip as a glass half full. There was always something not perfect and something I was doing wrong. Have you ever seen that movie, The Holiday? A Christmas movie with Jude Law, Jack Black, Cameron Diaz, and Kate Winslet. If you haven't, you should. It is so sweet and wonderful. It's a staple Christmas movie in my house. Kate Winslet's character, Iris, is in love with her coworker, Jasper, and has been for the last 3 years. She needs to get away to find closure. She lives in England and decides to take a trip to California. After enjoying herself on her trip halfway around the globe, Jasper shows up in California out of nowhere. He claims he cannot live without her and he misses her. At one point, she starts to feel happy that what she really wanted was happening. Iris asks Jasper if he left his fiancée for her, and he replies, I wish you could just accept knowing how confused I am about all this. Which meant he hadn't. This is the point Iris finally realizes she doesn't love him anymore. She didn't just need time away from him, but she also needed to have the closure that he will never change. He will always keep stringing her along, never making her happy, and never letting her go. The situation will never change, and she has done fine without him. She stands up and proclaims, I'm miraculously done being in love with you. I've got a life to start living, and you're not going to be in it. I feel like there was this moment for me when I got home from our trip to Italy. I was done and ready to start my life. After I arrived home, I met with the 2 friends that knew my whole story. These were separate meetings where I didn't tell them what the other person said. But they both noted I was changed. They could visibly see that I was emotionally unattached. I finally saw an end to this chapter. Italy was the closure I needed to move on. No one except these 2 people in my life knew what was going on. Everyone kept asking me how the trip was, and to be honest, it was hard to talk about. It's a blur of beauty mixed with intuition. Change was coming. It is hard to say if it was a good trip or not. The sights were amazing, the history was breathtaking, but the trip as a whole was a different kind of eye-opener. I saw a new door opening, and I was ready to leap. Although I was ready for change the moment I arrived back from Italy, I waited to make sure it just wasn't the trip that spun my head around. I wanted to make sure my head and heart were telling me the same thing. I wanted to make sure when I made the decision, it was made. I didn't want to take back what I was going to have to say. So I waited. I wanted a sign. I wanted so badly to know the answer 100%. To know my next move and fully be confident I made the right one. My husband and I had a date planned to do a run for beer 5K together. After getting into running that year, I wanted to do at least a 5K every couple months. I hate running, and it pushes me to run straight for 5K. I can run it, so there is no reason not to run. Do things out of your comfort zone. That is how you grow and change. We decided to use the time to go on a date with a run. We decided a beer after the run and planned to go out to eat after that. I still wasn't in love with him or in love with the idea of us. If we are going to be married and try to make it work, I should try too. What I didn't realize is everything would become crystal clear during the run. I had told him I didn't want to run with him. He is faster than me, and I really don't like to feel like I'm slowing someone down. It doesn't make me keep going, and I will use any excuse to stop running. I must put my head down and motivate myself to keep going. He is 10 inches taller than me, which means he has longer legs than me. Let's be honest. I also didn't want to run with him because I wasn't sure where my feelings were regarding him. I have to listen to something motivating while I run. Music is the best thing for me. I even have my own playlist on Spotify to listen to while I'm running to keep me running. On this day, though, I felt like I needed to hear Rachel Hollis in my head. I wanted to hear her last line of her book and hear her say, "Girl, wash your face." Thankfully, I have it on Audible already. I knew it would take me about 30 minutes to run the 5K. I went to the end of the book, clicked about 30 minutes in, and away I went. It had been 6 months since I had listened to the entire book. I didn't know what chapter I was going to land on. All I knew is I wanted to hear the last line. The audiobook has acknowledgments, an interview, and ending credits, which total over 20 minutes tacked onto the end of the book. Not realizing this, I clicked on the very last chapter because there was 30 minutes till the end of the book. I didn't know the name of the chapter, but I quickly found really there were only 12 minutes to the end of the book. And that is all I needed to hear to know my answer. The very last chapter is The Lie. I need a hero. It was what I needed to hear at that exact moment. I asked for a sign, and it was the sign I was looking for. I started to cry not long into the chapter because I knew what my decision had been for the last month. I was finally ready to face it, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. The thing is, I don't need a hero. I am capable and able to do whatever I want and need. If I did need a hero, he wasn't stepping up to bat, so why am I still waiting? I had to dry my eyes before we passed each other during the race and make sure no one saw me crying. I wasn't ready to talk about it right then and there because we still had a 45-minute drive home. I waited until we had dinner, we were home, and the kids were in bed. I sat on our bed while I told him I was done and didn't love him anymore. Even as I write this, my feelings have not changed. Italy was mid-September and our run was mid-October. I'm now writing this in January and editing it in November, and I'm still happy with my decision. Emotions don't change overnight. You cannot fall back in love with someone as fast as you fell in love with them. There's baggage that is attached, and sometimes it is hard to get past it. I now love him for helping me bring these 3 amazingly perfect kids into the world. I love him for being a good dad and still being there for me even though we are not together. My life would not be the same without him. But I do not look at him and long for him. I do not look at him and feel like I would be heartbroken to be without him. I look at him as a piece of my life I will cherish forever. But now I'm emotionally unattached. I have found my closure and I'm ready to start living my life. All right, that is that chapter, and I have one more reason to share with you guys next week. Please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. I would love to hear what you think of each of my chapters. If you subscribe to the channel, it'll show up in your feed when I post a new chapter every week. And if you actually hit that notification bell, it will notify you on your phone with a little text message that I have posted the chapter right then and there, so you can listen to it right away. So I will see you guys next week for another chapter of my book, Stronger Than Your Excuses. Thanks for joining me. Bye.